Whew, what a week. What a week. I want to thank all of you for always sharing the tweets and sharing these videos. Our reach is getting to some seriously amazing levels. And it's opened up some opportunities for me to be an outlet for people that need a voice. And this week, I was able to conduct an interview with a UK police officer, pretty lengthy one. And for those of you in the States, this probably seems like no big deal. You could walk up to any police officer, ask their opinion, and probably get it. Now, in the UK, it's very different. This is a nation that puts people in jail over tweets. The police force is seen as a meme. And as somebody with the utmost respect for law enforcement, I really feel bad for them. These are boots on the ground. These are people that don't have any real decision-making power. They have this job. They've done it for some period of time. They support their families, and they try to not get killed. Meanwhile, their government is taking away any ability for them to protect themselves, taking away any ability for these officers to enforce the laws, and actively working against them, it would seem, in my opinion. They also can't share their opinions. They can't really affect change because those that are the nail that sticks out is hammered down, and even more scary, these folks can go to jail for it. This is a Western nation. This is not some place in the Middle East. This is absurd to me. So much of what I learned during this interview is mind-boggling. Now, thanks to a lot of advice from you about keeping people's privacy and the severity of what is revealed in this interview, I'm not going to show any screenshots. I'm going to read excerpts from the email, but for what this officer has told me, he could very likely go to jail. I have verified their what's the word for it? I've verified that they're a police officer in a way that you're going to just have to trust me. But let's say I've seen, imagine me asking for you to hold a picture of today's newspaper in your uniform and showing your ID and then writing my name on a piece of paper. Okay. So this person is a police officer in the UK. You're going to have to trust me. I can't show you the picture because I just don't want anything to get back to this person. I would feel horribly if they were arrested or saw blowback from this, and they're very likely to. There will be inquisitions into who this person is. There is no doubt about it. Make no mistake. But it's important that the tale be told, and me being in the United States means I don't have to worry about their crazy laws, and I'm going to be an advocate for them. And when you look at the opportunities for these folks to speak out, there aren't many. And if I feel like if I can give them a platform, I'll hear from more. Just like we saw with Ubisoft, started with one, now I've got 10 or 20 people emailing me. Maybe I'll hear from more officers in the UK once this video gets out. So I want to start out with the introduction. So I was watching a latest video about working for Ubisoft, and it sounds very reminiscent of some of my experiences in a totally different field. I have no idea if this interests you or not, as it's far outside your usual wheelhouse. But here we are. And it's important to cover things out of your wheelhouse. It's important to shake your audience, to provide something a little different, I think. I don't want to just cover video games. I have a video coming out about South Africa coming, hopefully next week. You have to examine as many things as possible so you can see the trends between them. The email goes on. I work with the police in the UK. Yeah, I know the memes don't paint us favorably, but if you walk into any police station in the country, you get just the regular officers on the ground, with no possibility of one of the internal SJW commissars overhearing you. Then you'll hear some extremely spicy stories that would have every one of us fired on the spot if caught. For example, I'm not going to tell that story. There's a lot of very specific stories that I just can't tell. We hate the shit we're forced to enforce. We receive so many mean tweet jobs. It is ridiculous. We're taking 10 a week for a team of X in a small town. I'll say that. So I had always thought this mean tweet thing, like police showing up your house over mean tweets, was kind of a meme. It had happened to, a few people. No, it's real. This town is smaller than the town I live in, and he's going out to 10 or more police calls about tweets. Meanwhile, grooming gangs are roaming the streets, and we'll get to that because I asked him about a lot of specific things. And I'm sorry if this is going to be a long video, but this stuff is shocking, and it's a story that you're not going to hear on any UK media outlet, period. But here's the thing. If they don't pique the interest of higher ups, which little does unless the media raises a stink about it, for example, Count Dankula, then we write it off as not breaking any laws, and the person who was reported knows nothing about it. In the case of Count Dankula, we all thought it was completely ridiculous in every way to prosecute that. What officer has that time to spare? I entirely agree. As for promotion of POC women, etc., well, there are exams that you have to pass even applying for promotion. The force has special workshops from, quote, disadvantaged groups to help them pass in the run-up to exams. So basically they have a study group if you're a POC or a woman. Then after applying it's the interviews. The force has a special prep workshops for the same group to prepare them for the interviews. There are other things, like if you apply, your written English will be assessed. Unless you're black or a minority from an ethnic group, in that case, they cannot hold it against you. One very well-respected Afro-Caribbean officer kicked up a fuss as this, he said, quite rightly, it gave him the impression that force thought blank people are too thick to compete. Meaning, this is a POC officer basically saying, I don't need extra help. It's like you're babying me. I don't want extra help. I want to earn it on my own merit. Imagine that. Then there are one of the biggest memes on grooming gangs now. Those lovely groups that like to hang around with young women, plying them with alcohol and drugs. They are plentiful in my area, which is, as an American, it's just one of those times where I'm just like, holy shit, because this is a town the same size as my town, basically. I went after a city worker who had picked up a young girl from her school, and instead of taking her home, drove her to a quiet place and then started coming on to her. Luckily, she got away and rang us. That file was taken from me and given to a specialist unit. When I checked up on the case a week later to update the family, I was informed that it had been written off as a misunderstanding due to culture. So this is a man who kidnapped a young woman, attempted to, I'm sure, assault her. She escaped, and the higher-up said it was just a misunderstanding. As for the aforementioned SJW commissars, they are just like their 40K counterparts, except their guns and careers, not lives. They are not police. They are not employees. You see, we have a program here where people from the community can volunteer to work with the police in order to ensure that we're not discriminating. Invariably, the only people who have time or the inclination to do so are the sort of anti-police race-baiting SJW types. Of course, because the rest of us are just happy you're out there putting your life on the line to protect us. These people have the power to call the officer to a hearing where they will be judged by a panel of 5 of those same volunteers, and they can, quote, recommend disciplinary action to force if they feel you discriminated. These hearings always lead to that outcome. Luckily, they've shot themselves in the foot, and the professional standards departments, which took them entirely at their words at first, are increasingly skeptical. I would put in on the rise in murder rate. In London, partially at the feet of the lefty do-gooders. They review each stop and search you perform. If ethnicity of the person you searched is anything other than white British, then they make sure you have a good explanation because you will be called in. So guess what? No one searched non-white British people because it's not worth the time and energy to go on in front of one of these panels where you have to stand and listen to SJWs screech at you. This is their intended purpose. It is to disincentivize policing. I, of course, do not agree with any type of discrimination by anybody, including the police force. But that should not preclude you from stopping somebody. It's like the same level of racism, applied just the other direction. You're not allowed to stop anybody who doesn't look like you. The issue, and so then I asked about the issue. Well, the issue all this is causing, well, the good officers, those with the real sense of right and wrong, who want to truly make the world better, are either leaving in disgust or being ousted by these panels to be replaced by their own. There are a very real SJW takeover at the police in motion, which is exactly like what you see in gaming. So then I asked a bunch of follow-up questions. But, isn't this crazy? I know a lot of people in the comments will say like, oh, I already knew all this, blah, 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 blah. But you got to understand, like, this officer is taking a real risk sharing this information. And this confirms a lot of what a lot of us have suspected. I asked, do police like their jobs? I would say the police did like their jobs. Everyone I've ever worked with has seemed to genuinely want to help. We all want to do what's best for the victims of crime. But about 4 to 5 years ago, stop and search became a hot button topic. You see, nationally, black people were being searched 3 times as often as whites per capita, which set this "you're racist" mob off, similar to the U.S. Now, senior officers are terrified of that word, so they bend over backwards to accommodate them with community consultations and higher barrier to stop and search. This, as usual, was not enough, and we now find ourselves in a full-blown SJW inquisition who now have real power. Rather than using our best judgment, wanting to do what's right for everyone, it's consider what the screeching harpy back at the station would want you to do. As for the migrant problem, he then shares a horrifying story, but I think it's just too specific to share. I don't want, this person. Well, here, let me share this much. Basically, there was a domestic incident where a woman was abusing a man. This officer arrested the woman, as they should have, and that woman was then released, and this officer was publicly chided for it because he arrested the woman in a domestic incident, and it was demanded that he drop the investigation. As for the migrant problem, let's start by saying there are few, if any, Remain voters in the police because of the migration. We've seen it from the front lines. Exactly, right? When you're out there every day and you see the actual effects of what the elite bourgeoisie are enforcing on you, right? You see the real impact of it. You're not going to want to be one of the Remain folks, I assure you. Then I asked him about knives. He said it's kind of a meme, right? The knife attacks. As for knives, it's completely out of hand. I've been stabbed multiple times. Luckily, each time they were poor at aiming and hit my body armor. One such attack hit right where my heart was. Kind of a sobering moment. After I got home, I actually thought about it. I've had my legs broken, hands broken, from challenging what turned out to be illegal immigrants because they didn't want to get caught and get deported. It's rough out there. Well, that's what happens, right? You take away any level of force the police have, and now you're putting them out there where they have to defend themselves in like hand-to-hand combat. And even if they do, they are going to face blowback. So what's going to happen to the police force? They're going to become apathetic because there's really no reason to pursue it, is there? Because you're just trying to feed your family at some point. That's why you work. That's why it's called work. We are equally afraid to defend ourselves. The media backlash is only one YouTube video away, and senior officers are spineless when that sort of thing gets rolling. And then he shares a very messed up story, but I don't know. It'd be way too specific. And then I asked him about why I see all these videos of UK police officers just standing around when somebody needs to be subdued. Why these people are just roaming free with no pursuit. He said, and I didn't know this, you might not be aware that the police themselves are responsible for what the other vehicle does in any pursuit. If that car hits and kills a pedestrian, you're getting investigated for causing the death by dangerous driving, something which can carry 14 years in jail. This is why none of us chase scooters. I don't know if he means shooters or like scooters. Oh, it must be scooters. If they fall off and get injured in the process, we're going to end up in court. And the criminals know it. Just Google the problems we have here with scooter gangs. They know they're untouchable. They drive recklessly and we back off because screw risking our jobs, family's income, safety, and our freedom. This is... I don't want to like overstate it, but find me anywhere where you can get this level of detail from an actual police officer in the UK. I haven't seen it. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but these men and women are afraid to speak out. Their ability to protect themselves is being taken away by the government that doesn't have to be out there, do they? They don't have to be out there fighting the fight. They just have to tell the plebs to go do it. Disgusting stuff.